it's like starting from scratch. So even if you take a hiatus and you're kind of there, maybe for 2 years even, or like a year, if you don't keep on the client follow-up or have somebody running part of the business or helping you, real estate doesn't sleep. They're going to find somebody else. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to In the House podcast. So happy that you're joining us. Today's topic we've never discussed before, but I think that any woman can relate to this if you've looked at starting a family. And real estate particularly is a very difficult business with the time clauses, with the demands on, time, everything, all the negotiating. It's very difficult to be able to create that space if you're a new mom and pregnant and going to be having a baby. How does one set themselves up for success? Jenny, would you like to say more about this topic?
Well, I don't know if there's much to contribute, but I can imagine that it's a balancing act for trying to navigate a business where you're growing or even scaling, and you're navigating maternity leave as well in real estate, whether you are in a relationship, whether you're a single mom or whether you're a single dad.
For sure.
Right? And so today we want to dive into this topic that is crucial to many real estate professionals on how to successfully manage your business when you're, during maternity leave or when you're pregnant. And what perfect timing, because you're on your third child, but you have stories to share, which I didn't realize you went through when you had your first baby, your second baby, and now your third, and how you've grown.
So this episode will have a lot of the mistakes that I made in it, things that I wish that I would have known and done differently. But to be honest, there wasn't really anyone that I could have spoken to at the time that wanted the same production as me and also was that had gone through it and just prepared for. There wasn't that space. There was no dialogue around that. So we're hoping that for any of you women out there that have experienced this, or you're struggling because you want to have a family and you have a real estate career, hopefully these tips and tricks will help you. But again, even just for the conversation, if you find that after listening to this episode, you need someone to talk to, then certainly reach out, because happy to have a conversation about that.
I'm so happy we're having this conversation, because you could be at different stages of your career and you want to ensure your business is going to continue to thrive before, during, and after, while you focus on such an important chapter in your life. And we're covering everything from partnering with other agents, delegating tasks, and what you went through, Toni.
Yeah, but it really depends on what stage of business you're at when you get pregnant or when you're planning to start a family. So when I had Antonio in 2015, I had only been licensed for around 4 or 5 years. And I was just starting to see, that level where it's like, oh, it's so much easier now. I had been doing so much door knocking, so much cold calling. There was like that hard work component. And I was finally seeing the results of all of that pay off. So for me, and I love my son. He's the best thing in the world that could have ever happened in my life.
We love you, Antonio.
We love you, Antonio. At the time, though, I had a lot of stress and anxiety because my career was starting to take off where it was less stressful on me. Things were just happening. But I had just found out I was pregnant. I had no team. I had no assistant. I was a solo agent, and I really needed to, how are the clients going to be serviced? How will I bring in new business? Because don't forget, if you're a realtor, you can take a maternity leave, but you don't get paid from the government. So it's not like a salary job where you can go on EI or maternity leave and have some payment go towards your living expenses. You either work and sell stuff or you don't have an income. That's the reality. So plain and simple. But one of the things that I wish that I would have done at the time, being newer in the business, is, you have to look at budget. I didn't have enough funds at the time to hire a full-time assistant because even though I could have probably done it, well, what happens then if I'm taking time off and not bringing in business because I was the only agent? So I think for some women, my advice would be you could hire a part-time assistant. Some EAs even that are not present are actually really good at what they do. And it's not super, super costly to hire them part-time just to help with some of the tasks so that you can rest after you've had the baby.
So when would you say, like, what was the volume of deals? Do you recall what you were doing
It
to
was so
have to
long
do that?
ago. No, because, well, back then, and also the costs and everything were different. We didn't have the costs that we have today. But I think even if you're doing like a couple a month, right? And you're a solo agent, and don't forget, like the paperwork's increased too now. So it's actually more time consistent than like it would have been in 2015.
Right.
I think that you need a part-time assistant at least in order to help with the admin so nothing slips through the cracks. Because there's nothing worse than letting a client down. You can't just blame it on the fact that you've had a baby. There's a responsibility factor where the client still needs to be looked after.
Right.
So I think that I would say honestly, it also depends on how much time you want to take off and spend with the baby, because the realistic portion of this is that, and Warren and Aaron are finding this out now because they just had their first baby, my brother Warren. And obviously he's a guy, so he doesn't have to stay up all the time in the middle of the night. But there's going to be a portion where after you've had the baby, your body makes a ton of milk and everything. It has to go back to the way that it was. There's a huge energy expenditure component. The baby will cluster feed, which means that basically for the first several weeks, you're not sleeping at all.
Right.
So if you're not sleeping at all and you know that that's going to happen, how does it impact your negotiation skills? How does it impact time management? You're supposed to sleep when the baby's sleeping. If you don't do that,
but there's so much to do
so this is
while
the
the baby
thing.
is sleeping.
I didn't sleep when I had Antonio. I told you I ran on 2 to 3 hours sleep for a couple of years. No joke, a couple of years. And that's when my health plummeted, because when he would sleep, I would talk to clients on the phone. I was still negotiating. I was still taking listings. It was hell. It was hell. So what I wish I would have done differently was hire a part-time assistant. I could have afforded to. It was also like, well, what's going to happen with the longevity? What happens if I'm not bringing anything in?
Right.
And then the other thing that you could do is there's a lot of great women in the industry where maybe they've experienced something similar. You could also just partner. It doesn't have to be a woman, but maybe partner with a fellow realtor for a portion of time so that you can have the space to recover. You can have the space to spend with the baby. And also your business doesn't have to completely stop. Like, do you know any women? Because I do. And this was like my greatest fear at the time. I had known a few amazing top producing realtors. They didn't quite have a team yet because it was easier to operate not in a team back then. There was less paperwork, et cetera, et cetera. And they took time off from their real estate business to be with their kids. There's nothing wrong with that. But what happened was when they took the time off, they didn't set it up such that there was a contact person or a part-time or something could function without them.
Right.
And they lost business.
Right. Yeah, they probably never even, did they even come back into the business?
They did, but it was, and I won't say who these people are, but it was such a struggle. It's like starting from scratch. So even if you take a hiatus and you're kind of there maybe for 2 years even, or like a year, if you don't keep on the client follow-up or have somebody running part of the business or helping you, real estate doesn't sleep. They're going to find somebody else, unfortunately, right? That they're going to work with. And that happened to these other women. And unbeknownst to me, I didn't know it at the time because I hadn't actually had Antonio yet. This was why it was a greatest fear, is because they took time off and their clients ended up coming to me. I didn't know. And I also wasn't friends with them at the time. I didn't know. And then afterwards, there were a couple that had reached out and they're like, it's really hard because now I'm building my business from scratch. The technology changed a bit too.
What would your advice be for those moms who lost that business?
So I think if we're not starting from lack mentality, I think it's okay. What you focus on then is what you actually gain during that time. Maybe your health didn't suffer. Like my health suffered. Was it worth it? Probably no.
Yeah, you almost died.
Yeah, I know. But this is what I'm saying is like, so I went the other way. I'm like, I don't want to lose business. I want to keep expanding. So I'm going to work until I fucking die, which almost happened. And it's not worth it. So I think for them, what you focus on is this. To be honest, they probably had a better relationship with their baby than I did. And that's a beautiful thing. You can never recreate that. You can never recreate the time. So I think you be kind to yourself and you allow yourself the space for the healing and also spending time with baby. Because a lot of times people will say, oh, you have to make time for the baby, but we always forget about ourselves. There's so many birth stories too, right? Like you never know what's going to happen. I hope that it goes great for everyone. That didn't happen for me. And certainly for a lot of women, it just doesn't happen that way. So I think you be kind. You just realize in the moment what you actually gain from it. Were you more present as a mom? And you know what? The business will actually always be there for sure. It's just that then you have to have the tenacity and the excitement to kind of restart from the beginning.
Okay.
And you can do outreach campaigns too. But anyhow, my advice is if you're newer in real estate and you find out that you're pregnant, you're actually going to have to plan and put some money aside for either the part-time assistant,
right,
even an EA or something. If you can find someone that's actually good and cost effective, ideally you could do it with a full-time assistant for sure, but not everyone can spend that money.
So what are we looking at dollar-wise? If we can give like some hard numbers.
Okay, so well, before I go into answer your question, the cheapest way to do it, but you have to trust the person, is partnering with another agent if you're worried about cash flow.
So cheapest is having someone who is already in the business, who
that you trust,
who you have an understanding that the leads are still yours, the client is still yours, but they're basically being handed off in the meantime while you are on maternity leave or
they're
birth.
doing physical appointments, but you still might want to negotiate because that's also where you develop the client relationship, right? But it depends. Everyone's different.
Right. Like it depends on how hands off or hands on you want to be. So that's the cheapest, meaning maybe like a referral or a split of some sort.
Yes.
Right?
Like, 25%. It depends on how much work. Maybe it's 50.
Okay.
But there is an understanding. So you might want to have them sign something beforehand too.
Yeah. And I think a lot of clients would probably really understand as well that you have hand selected someone who you trust and kind of works in similar fashion or values as you, right?
Yeah. But if you can't find someone, you might have to go the part-time assistant route.
Okay.
And there is a really big range there. But for example, I love my assistant. So good. And everyone on our team knows it. She's a rock star. So sometimes you get what you pay for. And the range would be, okay, if you need someone just to help you stay organized with the tasks and help with maybe client care emails, because that's time, that's a lot of time too, right? Or client outreach. It can be anywhere from $20 to $30 an hour.
Okay, $20 to $30 an hour. How many days of the week?
So this is the thing. You can, and it's highly negotiable. There are some assistants that are pretty good where they only want part-time hours or less, or maybe they actually are an EA, so executive assistant, or that's a virtual one, where they actually have 3 or 4 clients nearby, so they don't actually require you to employ them part-time or full-time. It could even be, hey, listen, I need help like 10 hours a week.
Okay.
But then you be efficient with the time that you know that they're working so that you can offload things to them and the business doesn't stop.
What would be the items you would offload?
So I think it depends on your business and what you're really good at. I like negotiating only. I like taking listings, negotiating it, and selling it. That's it. So my assistant, what works for me is that she handles all of the prep paperwork for the listings. She puts the packages together. I'm actually getting her, this is perfect. It's my 3rd pregnancy to take on more responsibility, right? So I want her to also be able to draft contracts, but I still have to review them, right? Because there's a responsibility factor there. She handles all of the client care emails. So my other advice is like, okay, well, what happens then if you hire a part-time assistant? You've got a bunch of deals on the go. What would be really important for you is to carve out time to do a sketch and workflow of how you want the clients to be serviced if it's not going to be you directly. And this is actually so important for your business moving forward, even if you weren't pregnant, because eventually under the assumption that your team's going to grow,
Yeah.
you'll need this as a blueprint for how your clients will be serviced properly to your standard.
All right.
So as an example, we've saved email templates in our team email written by me, but Emily will send it out. And if it's a seller protocol, they get an email. Congratulations for listing your home with us.
Mm-hmm.
It's a template. She still has to look at the information and plug and play certain things in to make it relevant.
Mm-hmm.
But everything is there and we don't miss it. Nothing slips through the cracks. So congratulations. Okay, maybe the next one is, oh, congratulations, you have an accepted offer on your home. This is what's going to happen. It just helps with the communication and it doesn't have to be you.
Mm-hmm.
So when I had Antonio, this was me.
Mm-hmm.
I was still doing all of these things. It took so much time. And I just wish I would have spent the money and made it easier on myself.
What do you suggest? Like, would you suggest maybe hiring like some sort of like a nanny slash
So you're
EA?
different though. So remember we talked about it depends on where you are in your business.
Mm-hmm.
If you're an experienced agent and maybe you have already a full-time assistant or a team member, it's actually a lot easier.
Okay, so I did it the right way.
Yeah, well, yeah, you're having, if you were going to get pregnant now, yeah, it would be the right thing to do. So you would be able to delegate to your team members.
Right.
You'd have plans in place in advance with your admin assistant, marketing assistant, your team members, who's going to handle the appointments. Like this pregnancy is going really well for me.
Yeah.
Because I have a team now.
And you're okay letting go of that control.
I have no choice.
Yeah.
I have to let go. And the team is amazing. So there's no worries.
I tried
about
to talk to my partner about being a stay-at-home dad. He's like, no.
It's hard. It's hard work.
Years.
Any stay-at-home parent, whether you're stay-at-home mom or stay-at-home dad, it's so difficult. It's the most important job, but it's not going to feel super rewarding. So even my husband, David, encounters this, right? And it's hard. It's hard.
No, I bet.
But for you, so for example, it depends on how present you wanted to be in your business. And this is like an easier problem to solve because one thing could be you hire a nanny. We had a nanny after at some point. So we did hire.
After Antonio? Or?
When he was around 1.
Okay.
I had to because I just couldn't function anymore.
Okay.
But then it also relates to what's more important to you. Like, do you want to spend that time in your business? Like, are you having the nanny for rest? Are you having the nanny to go and help run the business? And then it's also a question of family values. Do you want a nanny there rather than yourself at such a critical time? There's no wrong answer.
It's funny that you brought up values, why that would impede on, like how values and having a nanny would actually relate to each other. Because there's a lot of couples or people judge people for having nannies.
Yeah.
And what comes up when you get asked that question?
So we used to have a nanny for the first several years. After Antonio was 1, we had one for about 3 or 4 years. But for David and I, the conversations we were having were that our nanny was amazing. She was a lovely woman. But ultimately, we were both working and trying to spend time with them. And so the values that were going to be instilled in Antonio were coming from the nanny. We actually were not okay with that. So for us personally, we ended up having the conversation about what do we want the family to look like? One of us wants to be there. If it's not going to be me, I would want it to be David and vice versa. We didn't want him being raised full-time by a nanny. And so that actually turned out, it didn't work for us. But when we did hire a nanny, sure. I mean, I think this is the thing. The reality is that we live in a world where there's societal pressure. Yes?
That's where I'm going at.
But in order for societal pressure to impact you, you have to allow it permission to do so.
Okay.
So now what I know is like back then, sure, I got judged. I was a terrible mom. I went back to work right away. I did my fucking best, okay? Like I was still making that kid organic food from scratch when I was home. That's also why I wasn't sleeping. And I was also doing the best I could at work while trying to expand it while having the baby. It was actually the hardest time in my life because it went into the health stuff, right? Which got even harder. But back then I was more influenced by society for sure. It made me feel bad. It made me feel bad. I felt like a failure and everything. I was probably a bit depressed, like because you want to be accepted and you're running on no sleep.
And you're a new mom.
Yeah. And I didn't know what I was doing. But now I'm like, it doesn't matter. You're going to have your opinion no matter what. So you have to do what works best for the family. So if you want to hire a nanny, let's say you get pregnant. You want to hire a nanny, do it. Because wherever you're going to hire that help or have extra help, to help the family or the business or both. You need it in order to continue to function.
The economics of this, I never really understood because I've never actually had to pay for it.
It's
but
expensive
I'm
having a
kind of
nanny.
curious to know though, when moms go back to work or dads go back to work and you're now having to pay for a nanny or daycare.
It's a full-time salary.
So like all the money that you're making is going into that.
Yeah. So one of the reasons why it wasn't just the values thing for us, but it was like, well, neither of us are here with our child really. Like we were, but it was just it didn't feel like there was a lot of space.
Mm-hmm.
And he spent the majority of his waking hours with the nanny.
Mm-hmm.
And so again, it's like, well, what is she teaching him? Would we agree with it? Do we want those beliefs to be instilled in him? Well, if we want to have a say, then we also have to be present.
Mm-hmm.
And then the financial aspect of that back then, 2015 was what, 10 years ago almost?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
So it's probably more expensive now. I don't know now. In 2016, it was like $3,000 to $5,000 a month.
I see. And so that would be, typical.
That's a salary for $60K a year.
Yeah.
And also you have to take into account too, it depends what the agreement was. Because if you have CPP and EI and whatever, if it was a live-in nanny, it's very expensive. So you have to be making, as a couple, a lot more than that in order to facilitate it.
Mm-hmm.
But again, for us, it came, so obviously the financial component was interesting. It came down to the values more so. Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
We're just not okay with it, which is why when we had Stevie, our second, it was a perfect time because David was no longer happy at his job and he wanted to spend time with the kids, mostly because he missed out on most of, we both did, at our time with Antonio when he was really little.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Or I'd take him to the office with me. I put him in the closet while he was sleeping and I would cold call in the other room.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So what we want to share with our listeners when you're just starting off or wherever you are in the business is consider partnering up with an experienced agent who you can trust with your clients. The second thing is possibly hiring like a part-time or virtual assistant who can
business.
work on an hourly basis.
Or part-time nanny
As well, so that you can still be on your business, working in your business.
Yeah, there's also programs. So when your baby's a little bit older, and if you want to go back sooner, there's certain programs at the city and things where it's a bit cheaper, but it's not. If you're a top producing realtor or you're trying to move into that realm, it's really difficult to be able to balance those things still.
Okay.
So let's shift for a minute for a more experienced agent, because this is related, but I would say you'd have to start delegating now. Like you're basically, if you've got 9 months, you find out you're pregnant, maybe not even in that first month, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm pregnant. I have 7 months to go.
Okay.
It's not a lot of time to set everything up properly if you hadn't been set up properly. So you should start delegating now because most likely you'd have a part-time, full-time assistant or a team member.
Okay.
So you'd want to make sure that if you already have a team, your team members are coming with you on the appointments, because it's very important for the client to feel that during that time, as your belly is expanding, that they're going to be looked after.
Right. Oh, what's a couple of things that came up during your
So this
interviews?
comes up all the time.
Yeah.
This comes with new clients. Past clients never have a problem with it because they know that I've worked the entire time and there's already trust. New clients this year, it still comes up. How are you going to handle the listing and sale of my home when you're getting so big and about to have a baby? This will always come up. And so you need to have a game plan. It's valid.
Yeah.
It's valid. It's the sale of their home, which is probably the most expensive asset that they've ever owned. So it's very important to have a game plan for that, which is why I recommend, if you already have a team, bring a team member on with you so that you can address this. You can even bring it up before they do, because they're going to bring it up. So on our appointments this year, I'd always just say, hey, listen, you're probably also thinking, how will our service be impacted when I'm having the baby in January? And my reassurance to you is that there will be no impact. I'm still, because for me personally, I want to make sure the clients are looked after and my team, so they can reach me by phone.
Right.
But they know that I will not be on physical appointments during that time. I've never had a problem as long as it's dealt with up front. And it's like, listen, these are the team members. Now you've met them. It's kind of like if you're pregnant and you're going into labor for the first time, scary. If you go with the midwife route, you meet the whole team. So at least you've seen one of them first in a very scary moment where it's like, shit, I'm about to give birth. and it feels like I'm in so much pain, I'm going to die. At least you know the other person that's helping deliver. You've seen them one time before. Same thing with a real estate transaction.
Yeah, okay.
Same thing with a real estate transaction.
But what I do appreciate, I'm sure what your clients appreciate is that you've actually, addressed the elephant in the room.
Well, you have to.
Because obviously you're pregnant and obviously they're going to want to know how, that no appointments
what
will
about
be
showings?
missed. So it's great. And I think I think for you have had a hard time handing tasks off to clients.
Mm-hmm.
In my day-to-day, I actually do not have any problems. I want to pass all the leads on to my team.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like mentally it's a bit easier for me to do that.
A lot of people are going to be like me where they're attached, they can't detach.
Yeah, there's not a lot of of course, there's a lot of listeners that are on this podcast right now who are solo agents. So we're just, we're
for sure. And so this is the other thing too.
Yeah.
Another helpful thing is if you do have a team or one member that you can turn to where it's have the marketing materials properly encompass your team and, I should reassure them that there's going to be no interruption during service during the time that you're going into labor and having the baby for a portion of time.
Mm-hmm.
I have scheduled my team meetings in advance because I have a team. So it's very easy. It's okay, social media meeting, weekly team meetings. I'll be on these. We're starting again January 6th. We're all allowing time off during that time.
Yep.
And then my last one will probably be mid-January.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then they're still going to have to meet. What else was I going to say?
So basically, pre-planning some dates outlined.
You have to, because you have to
advance.
still make sure that it's functioning well. Now, also, I'll give permission for all of my team members during this time, even when I'm in the hospital, to contact me. So I will still be, again, virtually, I can be there. They also know that I might need to sleep, but this feels spacious to me. So as much as you can engage and involve existing team members, now, so assistant marketing coordinators, et cetera, just start doing it and have a plan in place so that clients know who to contact so that you can have that space for rest.
For those who don't know Toni personally, this has been a huge, huge progress for her, okay? Because it was only this third pregnancy she can say, I feel there's a lot of space. I feel there's a lot of trust in my team. She's always trusted her team, don't get me wrong, but she's been always taking on the majority of the tasks.
Yeah, I've let go. It's good.
So it's good that she's letting go. And so this episode really shows proof that when there's significant, trust and putting yourself first, there's room for more business to come and allow your team to take care of that.
For sure. And so the third and final point we wanted to make is regardless of your number of years in the business, there's a few other suggestions too, just to help with the planning. So the first one.
Yeah. So the first one is incorporating some specific dates and milestones into your business plan. And I would also ensure that there's a lot of self-care. Okay?
Yeah, you have to.
You have to, because you want the baby to be healthy. When you're mentally stressed, they feel that. I'm assuming they feel it.
They do feel it because, we're energetic beings.
Yeah.
And what I wish I would have done, I did the opposite. I'm I want to plan for more production this year for the first pregnancy. That was the most ridiculous thing ever. You should be probably okay with either producing the same or slightly, maybe 30% less if you want to keep your sanity.
Okay. And the other thing is, I always say 33% business, 33% authority, 33% personal. And if you want to maintain some interaction online with your clients, why don't you post about your journey of being pregnant and about some of your family values? And I do think that a lot of clients will appreciate that whether you start a family or it's your second child, third child, how they are embracing you being a mom as well. So, put that connection online.
Yeah. And they still want to see they want to see a bit of your family life, but also that you're active. So maybe if you do one sale, post that up there too. And then it's integrating, bringing them along for the journey. People love that.
Yeah.
We already talked about having a plan so that you can tell clients how they'll be serviced. The most important thing, which Jenny would normally say, but I'm going to say it, is being kind to yourself because you just have to and you
Mhm.
deserve it. And I would say rest and reset when you need to, or you will burn out. So if you have hired or partner with somebody for additional help, let them know. Be like, hey, listen, I have to take an extra nap today or something. It's very easy actually to
Yeah.
do when it's set up properly.
Yeah. So, whether you're expecting, planning for the future, or simply interested in creating a more balanced approach to your real estate career, we want you to enjoy all the embrace the joy of motherhood, but at the same time, um, create room for the maternity leave planning. And so I love some of these tips, Tony. So we really appreciate you sharing some of your personal experiences, and some of the things that, created a lot of anxiety, I
Mm.
think, when you're a new mom, right?
Yeah, we wish you guys luck because honestly, no, no,
Is it luck?
no, it's luck and it is a bit of planning and it's just being kind. And I just want to reassure you as well that no matter what happens on your journey, if you're planning for both, you can have success in both realms. The question you have to ask yourself is, what is your definition of success for that portion of time? And also
Mm.
be flexible in terms of adjusting the plan. Maybe you just love spending so much time with your baby and being at home that these business things don't really matter to you and you can fully detach. That's okay too.
And why can't success be, I want to be the best mom
But this is what I'm saying.
ever,
Like
right?
yeah, that is an amazing goal.
Right.
It's an amazing goal.
All right. Good luck to y'all. And we'll see you at the next episode.